Here to discuss, Christina Partsinevelos and Independent Women's Foreign Policy Director Hadley Heath Manning. Christina, you were breaking this news yesterday. What's the latest?
The latest is that we have all of these stocks that are back up in the green today. Could have been premature yesterday because right now we know, we were talking about this, it's just the opportunity to open an investigation.
But it does feel like the sharks are circling, right?
Definitely. There's bipartisan.
The DOJ, the House.
Yeah, the House Judiciary is saying that they're going to open an investigation, but they're going to open an investigation towards the small number of, and I quote, dominant and unregulated platforms. So yes, to your point, you definitely have these sharks, and these sharks could stay around for quite some time, and they have got bipartisan support. But will this really come down to breaking up technology and splitting them up within the near term?
Hadley, it was interesting because early in the session, some of these names were still struggling. Facebook, in fact, was down for the first hour and a half of trading. But, you have to wonder because when you hear Tim Cook say, yeah, we could use some regulatory scrutiny. When you hear Elon Musk saying we want to be regulated, it feels like to me that these folks know that they're under the magnifying glass right now. Something's got to happen.
Yeah, and technology, what a great, innovative tool, so critical today to how we share information and ideas. So these firms really at the center of our marketplace of ideas in so many ways. That's why it's so important that lawmakers and regulators are cautious here, in terms of the investigation. I think even Democrats on this committee say that breaking up large tech giants is sort of a last resort. They're interested in how competitive these marketplaces are. And of course, as consumers, we ought to be interested in healthy, competitive marketplaces as well, because that's our leverage. That's how we decide, if we don't like the policies when we're interacting with Facebook, Google, Amazon, and so forth. We ought to have alternatives in the market. That would be a much better route rather than coming down with a hard hammer, a regulatory hammer.
And Christina, that's the tough part because I got to tell you, I've done many segments and I've done several reports on just Amazon, the killer. In other words, just when they say they're going to get into an industry, look at what's happened to UPS and FedEx since they said they're getting into deliveries. Other industries, they have an insatiable appetite to be everywhere and to dominate in everything. And that could come back to haunt them.
Right, because you have several of these larger tech companies that are buying up the small guys. And I'll give the example, you mentioned Amazon, but I'll give you the example of Google, where they bought Nest, and they're buying all of these small firms. So there's an opportunity where possibly they could look at the regulatory standards and decide, are these guys getting too big? The other thing that they can look at is predatory pricing for a lot of their products, let's say in the App Store. But the big question for our viewers, for everybody watching, is what is free to us anymore? We are giving up our time, we are giving up our data, so it's not necessarily free. You choose to do that. So can you really complain about these free services being offered? And I'm speaking maybe more towards Facebook.
Right.
But overall, the angle as to where they're going to go is they're going to use antitrust, and it's getting bipartisan support thus far.
Hadley, if I had a 5-day weekend, I'd try to make a Venn diagram of all the intricacies now, because I think the irony of all of this is that they're all encroaching on each other's turf anyway, right? So 3 or 4 of them are in cloud, 3 or 4 of them are in home and Nest and digital assistants. They're all going after the same thing, which seems to cure the concerns of the federal government, or should.
That's right. And, a healthy competitive marketplace isn't just any marketplace. There's characteristics about, not having entry and exit barriers. We want to have competition. We want to have substitute goods, good information for consumers. So knowing up front what our prices that we're going to pay are going to be, who's in cahoots, what not just horizontal relationships, but vertical relationships there are among various tech companies. So it's important for consumers to have the right information. And I've always encouraged people, buyer beware when it comes to these platforms, because it feels like we're in the public square when we're on Facebook or when we're, Googling something. We're out there on the internet, but these are private entities. These are private companies, and they have their own policies and their own terms. So when we do business with them, we've got to pay attention.
Well, speaking of buyer beware, I want to know, would you be buying right now? Because you have this dip, you have this overhang, but this could be years away. So is this an opportunity to get back in with tech?
Apple, Amazon, Google. Yeah, I would be a buyer if I didn't already own them. And I was
you
a
own
long
all
term.
4?
No, I own 2 of them right now, but if someone wanted to buy them, I would not talk anyone out of it. And by the way, folks, we actually have, are we going to go